Weird day in the world of the NFL. The Indianapolis Colts are undergoing some kind of transformation. We'll talk about Frank Reich, Jeff Saturday, and also we got to keep an eye on Josh Allen and his elbow. Welcome to the Locked On NFL podcast.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On NFL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It's Tuesday. That means you get me, Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL, here with David Harrison at DHarrison82. Does Locked On Bucks, Locked On Commanders. I do Locked On Vikings. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Get 10% off of your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. Thanks for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day. And I guess let's dive right into the biggest news of the day, which is the Colts firing their head coach, Frank Reich, replacing him with interim head coach of all people, Jeff Saturday. Wasn't even in the organization. First things first, let's throw to Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts for a quick hit on that.
A strange, disappointing season for the Indianapolis Colts continues to get even weirder on Monday as the team has fired head coach Frank Reich and named former Pro Bowl center Jeff Saturday the interim head coach. This is Jake Arthur of the Locked On Colts podcast. The Colts lost in embarrassing fashion to the New England Patriots on Sunday, of course, their most hated rival, 26-3, and falling to 3-5-1 on the season. Unfortunately for Frank Reich, it is not an isolated incident, and he is now out as head coach. He compiled a record of 40-33-1 since 2018 with 2 playoff appearances in which they were 1-2. Reich, of course, was dealt a pretty rough hand and was given a new quarterback every season. So the issues go beyond him. I do think this was probably the right move to make, but this is not going to be a magical cure-all for everything. His offense often lacked signs of life, and they rank in the bottom half of the league in pretty much every meaningful category. Now, logical interim head coaching candidates, there was a few on the team. Special teams coordinator Bubba Ventrone is someone who's probably going to get head coaching interviews across the league after this year. Gus Bradley, the defensive coordinator, has been a head coach before. John Fox, who's a defensive consultant, he's been a head coach before. But no, the Colts go out and get former Pro Bowl center Jeff Saturday. Yes, that Jeff Saturday that we all grew up watching is the interim head coach for the Colts. He'll get introduced later today, it seems. His head coaching experience goes to high school and not the pros. So that's a very interesting move, to say the least. So maybe that frees up those other guys I just mentioned to kind of focus on their task at hand. But still, obviously very strange, no doubt. We'll have much more on all this and more throughout the week on Locked On Colts. Check us out Monday through Friday. We usually have our episodes out first thing in the morning. YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you guys, and just stay tuned. Thanks.
So there is quite a bit to unpack. But I guess let's start with the actual firing of Frank Reich, and then we can get into everything else. It seems like the mood out of everybody in Indianapolis is that this should have been Chris Ballard too, or instead, or like at the very least, and or kind of thing. Give me your initial takeaway on that, David.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Chris Ballard is concerned, I mean, he's been in the franchise longer than Frank Reich. Reich has been in the franchise. He is the man that basically stocks the pantry, right? And then Frank Reich is expected to go and pull off this, 5-course meal or whatever Jim Irsay is expecting out of a head coach that literally, as Jake said there, has had a new quarterback every single season that he's been a head coach. Like, this is. So let's stick with Chris Ballard. So first off,
it's been Phillip Rivers too, like Jacoby Brissett, Rivers, Carson Wentz, whatever's left, the ghost of Matt Ryan. I mean, yeah.
So on the Chris Ballard part first, I do. I think if Jim Irsay, if you really wanted to clean house at this juncture, just clean house. You know what I mean? Don't keep the guy that's literally built your roster that is essentially a disappointment on several different fronts outside of Quinn Nelson, Jonathan Taylor, and maybe Alec Pierce, who looks pretty promising. In the early going. I mean, that there's still a lot to go there. Like, what has Chris Ballard really done to right this roster and put a competitive roster on the field that a head coach can go out there and do a lot with? Like, when I look at the Indianapolis Colts, I feel like Coach Reich is basically doing everything you could with the groceries that have been
Mhm.
placed in front of him. And that's, when Carson Wentz got traded from Indy to Washington, it's kind of one of the big things that was talked about is that Carson Wentz has never had as many weapons as he had in Washington to try to perform with. And that's why there's a better chance of him having some success. But as we go through the season, you almost look at this and say, well, 2 years in Indianapolis with Coach Reich and now having Alec Pierce, Jonathan Taylor, and Michael Pittman Jr. another year, and Paris Campbell is finally healthy now. Maybe that could have actually been a better situation instead of Carson now being in Washington trying to run a system that he's learning as he's going. It's very confusing to me, and it reeks of one person being thrown under the bus, and you hate to just kind of
Yeah,
blatantly
a
say
bit
that
of a
maybe the
sacrificial
GM
lamb.
is sacrificing the head coach. But honestly, I feel like at this juncture, just with Jim Irsay and quite honestly, how full of himself he kind of appears to be, I kind of feel like maybe the only honest person, honest broker in the room has been Frank Reich, and Chris Ballard is basically telling Irsay whatever he wants to hear to keep his job, and it's the guy who's telling the truth that is now being sent packing.
Bit of a political game, perhaps. I think I agree with that. I mean, you heard Jake say it 40, 33-1, winning
Yeah,
record, head coach getting fired. That's not that common to see unless it's something, my Vikings did that with Mike Zimmer last year, had a winning record in total, but it had grown stale and the culture was wrong and
yeah,
there were reasons. Um, I will say, though, in terms of the team building thing, Frank Reich was the one who pounded the table for Carson Wentz, and I think he does share
yeah,
some of the blame for that particular thing not working. I don't know
yeah,
how much influence he had on the other quarterback decisions, but that is clearly what is holding the Colts back. I do think that they've had some decent draft stuff. I still believe in Kwity Paye. I still think that there's some pieces around there. Or he's gone now, but yeah, there's pieces around that Colts defense that have been encouraging.
right.
They've had a really good offensive line for a long time until kind of like this year. There have been encouraging things about building those Colts. But I still feel like it's not enough for how much time Chris Ballard has had to build. You would
Right.
expect them to be a little bit closer right now. And Frank Reich still had them overachieving as they sit right now. I mean, when they were 3-3-1 and Matt Ryan got benched, I thought that Colts team had overachieved.
Yeah.
And so it was surprising to hear this be the guy.
And that was kind of the surprising thing for me too, is that, the general report had been, I don't know how firmly, Indianapolis media had confirmed it. Jake and I actually spoke about this. I was in Indianapolis recently because the Commanders played them in Indy, and we were talking
Hmm.
about this at lunch one day, and the report had come out that basically Irsay told Ballard and Reich that, hey, look, we're going to make this move from Matt Ryan to Sam Ellinger. You guys are safe. Don't worry about it. We're just going to see what we have in him and move forward from there. And the next thing you know, 2 weeks later, Frank Reich is out of a job, and Jim Irsay is doing a press conference talking about how things change in this league so rapidly, but then talking about a whole bunch of other things. I think honestly, Luke, there's so many other angles to this. What I would really like to do is kind of dive into this scenario, because I really think that Jim Irsay is essentially chasing ghosts, and I want to elaborate on that. And
Okay.
honestly,
Nice.
Jeff
Sweet.
Saturday, Jim Irsay, I think both of them are going to need some outside help to try to make this thing work if they really think they're going to pull this off. And fortunately, this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp Therapy Online, and everybody needs help every once in a while. And I feel like if any of the people listening or viewing this have an issue in their personal life where they could use some outside help, that our friends at BetterHelp Therapy Online could certainly help them, because sometimes there's just so much going on in life, whether it's work, whether it's your family life, whether it's a balance of both of them. Stresses come in different sizes and from different directions, that sometimes just simply being an adult in this world today can be a little overwhelming, and it can prevent you from becoming the problem solver that you know yourself to be. So having even a stranger who's trained to kind of analyze your life and analyze your situations and help you reach your goals can certainly be helpful. And I myself have had situations where I've leaned on some of those professionals to help me kind of clear some of the hurdles that I've tried to clear in my life. BetterHelp not only wants to be a part of your solution, they have convenient, accessible, and affordable professionals ready to help you online or over the phone, on or off camera. You don't even have to be seen if you don't want to be. And the best part is, once you complete your easy to complete survey and you get paired with a therapist, if you don't like them for whatever reason it is, you just don't click or whatever it might be, you can switch and you don't have to explain to anybody why.
It happens all the time.
You don't have to justify why. It's your therapy. They want you to have it the way that you need it. When you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/locked on today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/locked on.
Thanks again for making Locked On NFL your first listen of the day. For all sports, check out Locked On Sports Today, hosted by our good colleague and pal, Peter Bukowski, talking about everything going on, NBA, NHL in full swing now. Of course, the NFL and all things across all sports. So I just need to, what were you talking about? You just teased it, and now I need you to explain. So you think, well, let me give the facts first. So after firing Frank Reich, Jim Irsay names Jeff Saturday, who has not coached beyond the high school level, as head coach. Obviously, legend in the Colts building. I'm sure he's got keys to the city of Indianapolis. No coaching experience at all. So obviously some eyebrows will be raised here. Was stunned to not hear Peyton Manning discuss it too much on the Monday Night Manning cast. I thought he may have had a thought or two on his old pal getting that head coaching job. There was like a couple of one-off jokes, and that was it. But you think that they're seeing ghosts. Explain what you mean by that.
Yeah, I think Jim is chasing ghosts, and he's chasing the ghost of Andrew Luck, right? So Frank Reich takes over this job. His quarterback is Andrew Luck, and Frank gets him for 1 year, and then it's Jacoby Brissett, and then it's Phillip Rivers, and then it's Carson Wentz, and then it's Matt Ryan. And basically, I feel like Irsay and Ballard, right? They basically brought Frank Reich in thinking this is a quarterback guru, quarterback whisperer, whatever, who's going to take our seemingly future Pro Bowl, Hall of Fame, whatever, quarterback Andrew Luck to the next level and really take our team to the next level and go and win us a championship. And then they lose him very surprisingly, kind of unceremoniously. We all remember Andrew Luck being booed literally out of Lucas Oil, which was highly disrespectful. And from the looks of it, like they never really said, okay, Frank, who's the quarterback you need, or what's the type of quarterback you need to kind of really go build a team around this guy and let Frank. So Jim Irsay talks about this league changing all the time, right? Well, in that moment, the Indianapolis Colts changed from a team that had a franchise leading quarterback, future Hall of Fame caliber quarterback, to a team that had Jacoby Brissett. And no offense to Jacoby, but that's not a future that many NFL teams really want to grasp onto. But instead of saying, okay, this is our new reality, let's now adjust and let's now move forward with a new plan. I feel like Jim Irsay and Chris Ballard and basically told Frank, like, no, we're going to go continue to grab at veteran quarterback straws until we find ourselves an experienced guy that can run this offense the way that we want to do. There is no rebuild. There is no reload. It's we are going to get a veteran. We're going to move forward, and you're going to be the guy that makes it happen. And you just can't replicate what Andrew Luck could do when he was healthy and when he was on the field. And I think Carson Wentz, honestly, was probably Frank's really last. Like he got Jacoby, then he got Phillip. And I almost wonder, this is the conspiracy theorist in me, so don't take this as a report, but I almost wonder if maybe Chris
but on the tinfoil
wanted Mac Jones. And Frank said, you know what? We've gone veteran. Let me have my veteran. Let me have Carson, my veteran. Don't give me the rookie. Let me have my next veteran. Frank gets his veteran quarterback. Mac Jones goes to England, not only kind of sets the world on fire compared to perception and expectations, but now you see the New England Patriots beat them, and that's the quote-unquote final straw. You just put this head coach out there with a second-year, sixth-round draft pick quarterback, and losing to the Patriots is your final straw. Like, the whole thing just seems a little too weird to me, and I almost wonder if Chris Ballard isn't in Jim Irsay's ear saying, hey, you see one of those quarterbacks down there? One of those guys could have been our guy, but that guy over there told us not to go that way.
I like that. That's a fun conspiracy. I don't know.
It is a conspiracy, just so everybody understands again. It is a conspiracy.
I was listening to, there's this unbelievable podcast series that came out this offseason at The Athletic from Zach Kiefer about Andrew Luck's retirement. And
Yeah.
that 2018 playoff season, if you remember, they won a game, wildcard game, I believe, against the Texans. And then they actually fought the 2018 Chiefs tooth and nail, actually made a game out of that.
Yeah.
And they felt like they were on the cusp, like they were going to come back in 2019, run it back and contend. And then that was the offseason that Andrew Luck retired. And they thought, well, if we can just get a quarterback, this ship was ready. We just need somebody to fly it. And I think they just stayed in that mode for like 4 years, where instead, if they had gone, sucks 2019 because it happened in August. But if they had limped through 2019, gone into the 2020 draft and said, hey, let's maybe trade up for somebody, let's try to get somebody that we want. And just said, I know it's going to suck that we have this expensive roster that is kind of in a window and we're going to spend a bunch of it training a quarterback, but it's also a great environment with which to train a quarterback. Like that's a great place. I wonder if in the NFL world where the Colts had maybe tried to trade past the Dolphins or Chargers, gotten up in there, really been aggressive about it, if that was even possible or if that was something that they thought of. But I think maybe the thing we got to talk about now is Jeff Saturday, no experience.
Yeah.
And like you heard Jake say, Gus Bradley on that staff, John Fox on that staff, guys that have captained these sorts of muddy waters before. I think both of them have been interim head coaches before. They had another rising star. His name escapes me right now, but another rising star on that staff that could actually become a head coaching candidate in the not so distant future. They could have given him a chance. And let's just go hire a legend that feels like they're just talk about chasing ghosts, chasing the 2000s. I don't know what the appeal of Jeff Saturday is. And maybe we'll be proven wrong. Maybe Jim Irsay knows Jeff Saturday really well and knows that he'll make a fantastic head coach. And maybe Jim Irsay is playing 5D chess with all of us. But to me, it doesn't feel like that. To me, this feels like a spur of the moment thing that happened in what could be an emotional moment for a franchise that is having to accept that a build that it was really excited about back in 2018 after that playoff run, that they felt like this was it. We finally rebuilt it. We're finally going to be back to the contenders that this franchise has a history of being. And maybe in the world of accepting that the build didn't work and it's time to start a new one, maybe some emotional decisions get made because this feels like a mistake.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, so according to the Indy Star, here's a quote, one of many, on Jim Irsay talking about Jeff Saturday and when he was asked about the lack of experience that Jeff Saturday has. And keep in mind, everybody, that Jeff Saturday himself said he was surprised to be offered this position. So the guy getting the job was surprised to be offered.
And Jim Irsay said he was surprised that Jeff Saturday was available, which is hilarious. He was coaching at a high school.
Right. So here's a quote that I want to read everybody. According to the Indy Star, again, Irsay on Saturday's experience, quote, yes, there's a maturation curve. No, the game is not different. We don't build rockets to go to Mars. It's a very simple job we do here. We cultivate winning cultures. We don't expect anything more than we expect from ourselves. I'm not going to ask someone to do something I haven't done. I know who we are. I know where we're going. I know people can look out and see it and ask the experience question. I understand. I don't know how to make the sausage, but I do know how to build a football team. He's fully capable of doing this. It wasn't offered to anyone else. I don't know what Chris and I would have done if he wasn't available and winning. So, some things we need to point out.
What?
The Indianapolis Colts don't build rockets to go to Mars. It's easy. It's very simple to build a winning NFL team, apparently. And Jim Irsay is not going to ask Jeff Saturday, his new NFL head coach, who is just coaching high school football, to do anything that he hasn't done before. And as strong as Google is, I cannot find the record of Jim Irsay going from being a high school to NFL coach in the matter of a weekend.
The closest thing
is lunacy, Luke.
Yes.
This is lunacy.
The closest thing to this, the last time somebody became an NFL head coach without any prior coaching experience at the college or pro level, go back to 1961. Expansion, inaugural Minnesota Vikings hire Norm Van Brocklin straight off the Philadelphia roster.
Yeah.
Straight out of retirement. Be like Tom Brady becoming a head coach next year. Can I read another Jim Irsay
Yeah,
quote?
by all means.
Look, we're the fourth winningest franchise in the league since 2000. That means in the upper quartile of winners, we are in the top quartile of that upper quartile. And I'll give you all a moment to consult your notes. You might need to write that down and do a little bit of math, carry the one, to figure out what he meant. And I believe if you do that math, he is incorrect. I believe the top quartile of the upper quartile would be like 3-ish and a half, whatever, or 2. Yeah, that would be top 2. Yeah. So Jim Irsay, not a math guy, also because he lauded Jeff Saturday for not having any experience, because that would
Yeah.
make him too prone to using analytics. That's not an out of context thing, by the way. I paraphrased a little, but that's basically the point that he
That's what he
wanted to
said.
make. This is a completely unhinged thing, and it's a dark moment for the Colts, I think. If this works out, it's the greatest Hail Mary ever, and this will be talked about for years and years and years. If Jeff Saturday is a great coach for 10 years, we're going to have 30 for 30s on it.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
But
And every
if
other owner, I call this Jerry Jones syndrome. Everybody thinks that
this
they
is
can
a
just
Jerry
build an
Jones thing.
NFL team because Jerry Jones
Mhm.
did it in the 90s. But not
Yeah.
everybody can make sense of that. But Luke,
Right.
something that it's easy to make sense of is what happens with our friends over at PrizePicks, because it's much
Yes.
simpler. All you do, it's very easy. You don't have to build a rocket to Mars. All you got to do is pick 2 to 5 players,
It's not rocket
and if
science.
they score more or
It's
less
just
than the
you and against the
PrizePicks
house.
projection, you win money. That's it. PrizePicks has a projection. It's very simple what we do here. PrizePicks projects numbers for players. You say whether or not they're going to beat or fall below those projections. And if you're correct, you win money. You win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against anybody else, crazy or otherwise. It's just you versus the PrizePicks projections. And you don't even have to stick to the NFL. You can't go to high school, but you can go to the NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, PGA, college football. You can even go to cricket. And better yet, they have safe and
Why
fast
not?
withdrawals, currently operating in over 30 states and Canada. So download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play today. Play your daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 using the promo code Locked On. So if you deposit 100, they deposit 100. Anything less than that, they still match it just by using the promo code Locked. So Locked On. So don't forget promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100 on the PrizePicks app, or prizepicks.com.
Switching gears a little bit on the Locked On NFL podcast, David Harrison. I am Luke Braun. Let's move elsewhere in the AFC. We'll go to the AFC East, where the division leading by half a game over the 6-3 Jets and Dolphins. The Bills are experiencing some trouble. Reports, I think the most specific one came from Chris Mortensen, that Josh Allen, they're still running tests, so they don't know yet. And as of this recording, we aren't 100% sure, is dealing with a possible UCL injury similar to the one he suffered in 2018 that kept him out for, I think, more than a month, and maybe even nerve damage. He suffered this on a strip sack in the Jets game. The Bills lost to the Jets this Sunday, and he kind of wasn't right since. He was shaking out his arm. People noticed balls were coming in a little bit under, a little bit soft on him. So this could be earth-shattering AFC news if Josh Allen has to miss a lot of time. Not only because the Bills were the front runner for the 1 seed, right? Now it's a race that a lot of people trying to catch up with the Chiefs for that, but there are teams that possibly could. But if the Bills end up missing Josh Allen for a month or so, even go 500 there, suddenly their grasp on the AFC East is looking tenuous, because they only have a half game lead on 2 different teams right now. One of those teams is the Dolphins, which has arguably the best offense in the NFL.
Right.
And the Jets, who are very plucky and just beat the Bills. So there's a tiebreaker thing there too. This could get real weird in the AFC, when it felt like the AFC before was kind of the Chiefs, the Bills, and everybody else.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a lot harder, even if you are the Death Star the Bills are. It's a lot harder to play on the road if you can't win your division.
No, it absolutely is. And you like you mentioned, the Dolphins and the Jets have proven themselves to be fully capable teams of either beating other competitors or at least making life very, very difficult on them, and
Mhm.
you almost wonder if the Buffalo Bills aren't regretting letting old Mitchell Trubisky walk out the door now, because now he would have multiple years of experience in this offense, and granted, Coach Dable is no longer with the team, but he knows the players, he knows the personnel, he
Mhm.
knows the atmosphere. Case Keenum is an accomplished veteran
Vouch.
himself, but he's no Josh Allen, and
Look, Case
at this
Keenum
point, I
stepping
don't
in
know
as
if
a
he's Mitch
backup.
Trubisky.
I have some experience with Case Keenum stepping in as a backup.
Do you now with the Minnesota
I
Vikings?
look, I've seen it work. All right.
Yeah, no, that's true, and no disrespect to Case Keenum, but I think if you're the Buffalo Bills, there's no good answer. Like there's I don't care
No.
who your backup is, there is no good answer. And I mean, we just got done talking about a franchise that lost a franchise caliber, franchise leading quarterback in Andrew
Mhm.
Luck, and now this one, they lose Josh Allen, like you said, you mentioned the injury history before, and yeah, in this AFC, by the time you get him back, if you get him back at all, this could be a done deal. I mean, the AFC is very, very competitive, and you could be third place in your own division by the time you get Josh
Mhm.
Allen back, and you may have so many tiebreakers lost that it's just not it's a little bit different when you have, like, you're going to look at Stephon Diggs and people are going to say, okay, they still have firepower, but Stephon Diggs can't get the ball out to himself, and he can't make the right
Yeah.
read for himself, and all these things. It's not the same as having a all pro caliber quarterback. And while that Bills defense is fairly good, I would say, in the upper echelon of the NFL, any
Also banged
defense
up.
that has to carry the entire weight of a team is eventually going to collapse. Like, I think that's just kind of a known commodity. So I don't know, you know, where the Bills turn from here. You just kind of hope that nerve damage speculation isn't really serious, because I mean, if this turns into a situation where Josh isn't even, necessarily feeling the football in his hand completely, like, that could be even more problematic moving towards the future. And you hate to speculate too far down the road just because you're talking about a young
Yeah.
man's future. But I mean, it's definitely not good news, and brings up a whole lot of uh-ohs if you're the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, and the way I read Mortenson's tweet, and I could be misreading it, so grain of salt, but the way I read Mortenson's tweet was that they are testing for nerve damage, not that they
Right.
fear or that there is or anything like that, but that's just like part of the process is that they have to test for that. But the word nerves was in the tweet, and that was
Yeah.
it's a very scary thing.
And that's gonna strike a
Um,
lot of nerves when you do that. Yeah.
got him. But like the Bills, like Josh Allen is papering over a lot of stuff with the
Right.
Bills. Like they have holes on that offensive roster. They have Stephon Diggs, but the rest of the weapons, they've Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie. They've had good fantasy seasons, but it kind of feels to me watching the Bills, as much as I've caught them on primetime, that it is Josh Allen elevating a lot of people a lot,
Yeah.
and what gets exposed if he can't go for a little while. But
Yep.
the hope of hopes is that I mean, shoot, it might be minor enough where it's the kind of thing he can just play through. We don't know that either. Absolutely, that is
Right.
an outcome that can happen, and he doesn't miss a game. But the hope for me is that if he does have to miss time, he doesn't miss too much, because these Bills are really fun. I love these Bills. I want to see them succeed. I want to see them in the playoffs at full strength. I want to see them playing at home like they deserve to, and see just how far that ship can fly. Um, and so I hope that if Josh Allen does have to miss time, that it's not so much that it makes suddenly there's a 2-game deficit behind Miami in the division and suddenly they're chasing it and they've
Yeah.
already lost to Miami once. Like that's the other part of this is the Bills have lost to both the Jets and Dolphins, and that's the division race right now.
Right. No, I
So we'll
mean,
see how. Yeah.
yeah, no, I mean, the good news is, if you do, let's say you lose them for a month, you're talking mid-November to mid-December. The next five opponents, I suppose, if you want to get to mid-December, you're looking at, you got the Vikings coming in. And Luke, obviously, just like Case Keenum, a little bit of something about the Minnesota
Yeah.
Vikings, who find themselves in a lot of one-score games, and perhaps could
Mhm.
have or should have, even in some avenues, lost to the Washington Commanders recently. So, if the Washington Commanders with Taylor Heineke could be competitive, could the Buffalo Bills with Case Keenum be competitive? You could make the argument that's a
Well, for sure.
possibility.
And yeah,
Uh,
they've still got a lot of talent. Like
right,
covering the Vikings going into this game, I'm not going, well, Case Keenum's going to play. That's a win.
right,
And a lot of
yeah,
Bills fans are
exactly,
saying if Case Keenum plays, it's an auto loss. But look, I'm watching the Vikings. They have lost to some backup quarterbacks in recent years. They were
trust
losing to
the
Cooper
Vikings.
Rush before anybody else was.
Yeah,
They lost.
trust the Vikings host on this one. But then you have the
They're not
Deshaun
beyond
Wilson
losing any
Browns.
dumb game.
Yeah, you got the Deshaunless Browns, you got the Detroit Lions, you have the New England Patriots who lost to Chicago Bears, and then that fifth game is the New York Jets. So I mean, if you don't have him back
That's
for
a
that New
huge
York
one.
Jets game, then obviously you could lose because you just lost to
Mhm.
that game with and Josh missed, or got injured in that game. So, but I mean, you could still see feasibly this team coming out like 4-1, right? So it's still not an all is lost. I mean, even if you come out of those 5-3-2, even 2-3, maybe the ship's not completely sunk, and then you've got 4 more weeks to get Josh back and come back. And you got the Bears and the Patriots in there again, but you also have the Dolphins and the Bengals in there. So it's tricky, but that's what the NFL does is they make it to where any given Sunday and all those things. But I think it'll be important for people to remember that any given Sunday still applies to the really good teams, even when they lose their starting quarterbacks. Because I'm with you. I mean,
Mhm.
A Bills Eagles Super Bowl just sounds like probably the most fun thing
Mhm.
that we could all do all of 2023, and it'll happen in the second month of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hoping that the Bills can keep that ship together for as long as they have to. But we also don't have a lot of information. We were talking about this a little
Right.
prematurely. And as the week goes on, we'll learn more about where Josh Allen is at. We might get some information on Tuesday. You listening to this might know more than we do recording it. So,
Yeah.
developing situation, and we'll keep you posted here on the Locked On NFL podcast. Of course, this is a daily show, so we'll be back tomorrow. You'll be talking to Tony Wiggins and James Rapine, and we'll just kind of keep taking it as it comes. For David Harrison, I am Luke Braun on the Locked On NFL podcast, free and available on all platforms.